What if the perfect marriage you built was based on a lie? Rebecca thought she knew everything about her husband, until a psychic pulled one card that unraveled her entire life. Rebecca had been having that dream again, the kind that lingered long after she woke. She knew that if she didn't seek help soon, the dream would keep repeating itself, each night more vivid than the last. Her mind was elsewhere as she walked down the street, her thoughts far removed from the drizzle. The cold hit her abruptly, pulling her back to the present. She shivered and glanced around, noticing how the April rain seemed poetic in a way. It made the city shimmer, gave everything a temporary softness. But today, she was soaked, irritated, and her brand-new suede boots were ruined. She ducked under a crooked awning, ready to call a cab, when a flicker of light caught her eye. Tucked between a closed laundromat and a vape shop was a tiny storefront she hadn't noticed before. Madam Sylvia's psychic readings, palm, tarot, past lives. Rebecca hesitated. Normally, she wouldn't give a place like this a second glance, but today wasn't normal. Today, something felt off. Without another thought, she pushed open the door, and immediately, the smell of incense wrapped around her like a curious cat. Wind chimes jingled overhead. The dim light revealed a room filled with velvet curtains, dusty crystal balls, and the soft glow of flickering candles. In the far corner, behind a round table, sat a woman who didn't seem to notice Rebecca's entrance at first. She was shuffling a deck of tarot cards with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times, the movement fluid, almost hypnotic. The woman was tall, standing at 5 feet 8 inches, with sharp, captivating green eyes that seemed to pierce through Rebecca, as if she could see every thought hidden in her mind. Her long, dark hair cascaded in loose waves, a few strands pulled back in a messy yet purposeful bun that suggested a quiet elegance. Despite the casual, almost effortlessly undone look, there was an air of natural beauty about her, both alluring and unassuming. "You're late," Madam Sylvia said, her voice low, but commanding, without looking up from the cards. Rebecca blinked. "I'm sorry. I've been expecting you since Tuesday. Sit." Rebecca paused, a flicker of unease sweeping over her. How does she know who I am? She thought, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. Something about the room, about the woman, kept her rooted to the spot. She moved to the table and sat down across from Sylvia, glancing at the tarot cards scattered before her. The deck was old, the edges worn, and there was something about it that felt familiar. "Do you know why you're here, Rebecca?" Sylvia's voice was softer now, almost coaxing, as her green eyes locked onto hers. Rebecca swallowed, her throat dry. I don't think so. I just saw the sign outside." Sylvia cut her off with a slight raise of her hand. "The universe doesn't work like that. You're here because you have no choice. You've been avoiding it for too long." Rebecca's pulse quickened. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap, her mind racing with thoughts she didn't want to confront. What is she talking about? Madam Sylvia didn't wait for her to respond. With a practiced flick of her wrist, she flipped the top card of the deck and laid it down. The card depicted a shadowy figure holding a dagger, standing on a precipice. "A past life," Sylvia murmured, her fingers lingering on the card as if it were delicate glass. "One you've been running from. One that's calling you back." Rebecca's stomach churned. She leaned forward, her gaze instinctively drawn to the card. It felt unsettling, like a memory she couldn't quite place, but knew she should. "Do you recognize this?" Sylvia asked, her voice cutting through the silence. Rebecca swallowed hard, her mind racing with fragments of images from her dreams. Those strange, haunting faces, the rooms that seemed so familiar yet foreign. She couldn't pin it down, but there was something in Sylvia's words that struck a deep chord. I don't know," Rebecca whispered. I've been having this dream. Every night. The same dream." Sylvia nodded slowly, as though she had been expecting that answer. "The past doesn't stay buried for long, Rebecca. Especially not when you ignore it." The air in the room seemed to thicken, charged with an energy Rebecca couldn't explain. It felt like the room itself was watching her, waiting. Had she been ignoring something? Something bigger than she could understand? You need to face it, Sylvia continued, her voice steady and unwavering. If you don't, it will consume you. Rebecca's breath hitched in her chest. She had thought, maybe, that her dreams were just that, dreams. But sitting in this strange room, facing the intensity of Sylvia's gaze, she wasn't so sure anymore. Are you ready for that? Sylvia asked, as if challenging her. Rebecca hesitated, a knot forming in her stomach. Am I ready to confront this? She thought. She'd always tried to ignore the dreams, tried to push them away. But now, sitting in front of this woman who knew too much, she wasn't so sure she had a choice. I don't know, Rebecca finally whispered, her voice barely audible. Sylvia didn't offer comfort. Instead, she placed another card on the table. This one depicted a woman holding a sword aloft, her stance defiant, fearless. It's not a matter of being ready. It's a matter of how long you'll wait before it's too late. Rebecca felt a chill wash over her, her thoughts swirling. She had ignored it for too long. But now, with the weight of the cards and Sylvia's words pressing on her, she knew, whether she was ready or not, it was time to face what had been haunting her for so long. The door to her past was open, and whether she stepped through it or not, it was waiting. Rebecca sat back, trying to suppress a grin. Sylvia's intensity was a lot to take in, but the whole situation was starting to feel almost absurd. Do you say that to everyone who walks in? She asked, trying to lighten the mood. Sylvia paused for a moment, her green eyes locking onto Rebecca's with a piercing gaze. Finally, she looked up from the cards, her lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. Only the ones who pretend they don't believe in this stuff. Rebecca bristled, though her smile stayed in place. I don't. You do, Sylvia interrupted smoothly, as she spread the cards out on the table with a dramatic flair, each movement deliberate, like a magician about to reveal a secret. You just think you don't. Big difference. Now, let's see what the universe wants you to know. Rebecca leaned forward, watching intently as Sylvia selected the first card, her fingers brushing it like it held the key to some hidden truth. The card was large and faded, the edges worn with age. Sylvia turned it over, her expression serious as she looked at the image. The lovers, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Rebecca let out a short laugh, unable to resist the urge to make light of it. Oh great, I married the right guy. Sylvia didn't laugh. Instead, her eyes darkened, and for the first time, Rebecca felt the weight of the room shift. There was something heavy in the air, something Rebecca couldn't explain, but it tugged at her in a way that made her pulse quicken. No, dear, Sylvia said softly, her voice taking on a more somber tone. This isn't about love. Not the kind you think. Rebecca straightened, her humor fading as unease crept in. She shifted in her seat, suddenly aware that the air between them had thickened. Okay, spooky. Sylvia leaned in closer, her gaze unwavering as she drew another card. The atmosphere felt charged now, thick with something unspoken. Your husband holds a secret, Sylvia continued, her voice quieter but more insistent. One that could destroy everything you know. Rebecca's heart skipped a beat. Her first instinct was to laugh it off, but there was no mistaking the tension in Sylvia's words. What are you talking about? Sylvia didn't answer right away. She picked up the next card and stared at it for a moment, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched, heavy with meaning, before Sylvia looked back at Rebecca. Not everything is as it seems, Rebecca. The past is tied to the present in ways you can't yet understand. And your husband, he knows more than he's letting on. Much more. Rebecca felt a wave of nausea rise in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak but found herself silent, unsure of what to say. The dreams, the unsettling sense that something was wrong. Was this what she had been running from? Sylvia's gaze softened just a fraction, as though sensing the storm inside Rebecca. The universe doesn't make mistakes, Rebecca. It's guiding you, pulling you closer to the truth, whether you're ready for it or not. Rebecca swallowed, trying to steady her breathing. You think my husband is keeping something from me? She asked, the words tasting foreign on her tongue. Sylvia didn't answer right away, instead continuing her silent shuffle of cards. The sound of them clicking against each other filled the room, echoing off the walls. Finally, she stopped and placed another card face down between them. Rebecca stared at the card for a long moment, her mind spinning. Could Sylvia be right? Could Nathan, the man she'd been married to for 5 years, be hiding something? She thought back to their life together, steady, predictable. He was kind, reliable, always there for her, but was that the truth? Was there something lurking beneath the surface? I can't promise you'll like what's coming, Sylvia said, her voice cutting through Rebecca's spiraling thoughts. But I can promise you won't be able to ignore it forever. Rebecca closed her eyes, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table as a shiver ran down her spine. She had thought the dreams were just that, dreams. Now, though, sitting in front of a woman who seemed to know things she couldn't explain, it was starting to feel like something more. Why are you telling me this? Rebecca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why now? Sylvia took a long breath, her green eyes narrowing as she studied Rebecca. Because you're at a crossroads. The decision you make in the next few days will change everything. The cards, the universe, they're pointing you in a direction. But you have to choose whether to follow it or turn away. Rebecca's mind reeled. She had never believed in this kind of thing. Tarot cards? Psychic readings? It all felt so impossible. Yet, here she was, in this tiny, incense-filled room, facing a woman who had just told her that her husband was hiding something that could destroy her life. For the first time in a long time, Rebecca felt the cold, sharp sting of fear. Sylvia's lips twitched, a faint smile tugging at her mouth. Coffee? She asked casually, as though they were two old friends sitting down for a chat. Rebecca blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in the mood. She didn't know if she was supposed to laugh or scream. Instead, she nodded, grateful for a moment to breathe. As Sylvia moved to make coffee, Rebecca couldn't shake the sense that her life had just taken a turn down a road she wasn't ready to walk. But there was no turning back now. Back home, Rebecca replayed Sylvia's words over and over in her head. Each time, they sounded more absurd than the last. She told herself it was nonsense, just something weird old ladies said to make you feel mysterious, like a twisted fortune cookie. But the more she thought about it, the more the words lingered, clinging to her thoughts like an unwelcome guest. She tried to shake it off, but when she opened Daniel's closet the next morning, it happened. A tin box fell from the top shelf, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Rebecca froze, staring down at it, her heartbeat quickening. It wasn't something she recognized, not something they had kept around. With hesitant fingers, she lifted the lid. Inside, there was an old photograph of a woman she didn't know. Her face was familiar, yet foreign, like a memory just out of reach. Along with the photo was a letter, the edges yellowed with age, and a silver ring that shimmered even in the dim light of the closet. Rebecca's stomach dropped. A wave of cold dread washed over her as she looked at the objects, then back at the closet, as though expecting the rest of the room to betray her. What was this? What was Daniel hiding? Honey? Daniel's voice called from the kitchen, cutting through the silence. Want me to make your usual? Rebecca's pulse raced, and she quickly snapped the box shut, stuffing it back onto the shelf. Yes, she shouted back, trying to keep her voice steady. Just give me a minute. She didn't know what to think. She didn't know what to feel. But she couldn't let him know she found something. Not yet. Not without answers. She grabbed her purse and left the house, the box hidden away in her bag, her mind swirling with questions. At work, she couldn't focus. Every time she looked at her desk, the box seemed to weigh heavier in her bag, like it was daring her to open it. At one point, she even pulled it out, staring at it for a long time before tucking it back out of sight. She tried to drown out the nagging feeling in her gut, telling herself to focus on her work, but the image of the photo haunted her. She finally caved. At exactly 3:17 p.m., Rebecca pulled out her phone and typed a message to Sylvia. What kind of secret? She barely hit send before the reply came, nearly instant, as though Sylvia had been waiting. I told you. One that ruins everything. Come back. Bring coffee. No decaf. Rebecca stared at the message for a long time, her thumb hovering over the screen. It didn't feel real. Nothing felt real. Her fingers shook as she set her phone down, the room suddenly too small, the air thick with an uncertainty she couldn't escape. She glanced at the clock, 3:18 p.m. She needed to go back. She didn't know why. But she had to. You kept the box? Sylvia asked, her eyebrows raised high as she sipped her extra hot caramel macchiato, the steam from the coffee curling in the air around her. Rebecca couldn't help but feel defensive. Of course I kept it, she snapped, her voice a little sharper than she intended. What kind of psycho throws away mysterious boxes of doom? Sylvia held up her hands in mock surrender. Hey, I'm just the messenger. What's in it? Rebecca set the box on the table, opening it slowly, like she was revealing something sacred or cursed. Inside was the photo, the letter, and the silver ring. Sylvia leaned forward, inspecting the items with an almost detached curiosity. Sylvia whistled as she picked up the photo. Oof. That's not your ring. And that's definitely not you in the photo. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Gee, thanks for the news flash. I mean, unless you've had a secret nose job and time traveled back to 2002. Sylvia added, giving her a cheeky grin. Rebecca narrowed her eyes, her frustration mounting. Can we skip the sarcasm and focus on the whole ruin everything I know part? Sylvia took the photo from her and studied it carefully, her lips pressing into a thin line. Her eyes flickered with recognition. This woman, she looks familiar. Wait. Before Rebecca could respond, Sylvia stood up and moved quickly to a shelf in the back of her little shop, pulling down a tattered book. She flipped through the pages with surprising speed, then froze, gasping. Yep. I knew it. That's Clara. Clara? Rebecca repeated, feeling her stomach churn. Who the hell is Clara? Clara Marchesi. Former opera singer, Sylvia replied, her voice low, almost reverent. Died 7 years ago. Rumored affair with a married man. Rebecca stared at Sylvia, the pieces of the puzzle just out of reach. Please tell me you're not suggesting. Sylvia didn't let her finish. She cut her off with an unflinching certainty. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm saying it. Daniel knew Clara. The words hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud, and Rebecca felt a wave of nausea hit her chest. Daniel knew her? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How? Sylvia shrugged, clearly unfazed by Rebecca's shock. I don't have all the details, but I do know that Clara Marchesi had her fair share of secrets. And judging by the ring, that's one of them. Rebecca felt the weight of the photo in her hand, the image of the woman staring back at her with a knowing smile that seemed to mock her confusion. The ring. The letter. All of it felt like a trap, a slow unraveling of everything she had thought she knew. How do you know all of this? Rebecca asked, her voice low. Sylvia set down the book, her fingers tapping the edge of her coffee cup. I told you, I don't just read tarot cards for kicks. I've seen things, heard things. Clara Marchesi was involved in some pretty messy business in her day. But I didn't think Daniel was a part of it. Not until now. Rebecca stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need to go, she muttered, her head spinning. This is too much. Don't be so dramatic, Sylvia called after her, unfazed by Rebecca's sudden departure. You'll be back. And trust me, this is just the beginning. As Rebecca left the cafe, her heart was pounding in her chest. The box, the ring, and the photograph felt like a bomb ticking in her hands, ready to explode. She couldn't get the image of Clara out of her mind. Who was she? And why the hell was Daniel hiding her? Rebecca felt the weight of Sylvia's words. Daniel knew Clara. The truth was out there somewhere, and whether she liked it or not, Rebecca was getting closer to it with every passing moment. You stalked her? Daniel's voice rose as he paced the kitchen. Rebecca, are you serious? Don't turn this around. You lied. I didn't lie. I just never told you. That's literally the definition of lying. Daniel dropped into a chair, running a hand through his hair. Clara was, look, it was a long time ago. We dated before I met you. She passed away. I didn't think it mattered. Rebecca narrowed her eyes. Then why do you still have her ring? Daniel went quiet. The silence stretched. Because she's not dead. Complicate things? Rebecca shook her head, her anger rising. This is everything. You've been keeping secrets, Daniel. And don't you dare tell me you're still in love with her, because if you were, we wouldn't even be here, would we? I never stopped caring about her, Daniel admitted, his gaze locking with Rebecca's. But I care about you too. And I don't know what to do about that. The weight of his words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Rebecca stood there, torn between hurt and confusion. The image of Clara, the woman Rebecca's heart skipped a beat. She blinked at Daniel, trying to process the words that just left his mouth. What do you mean, she's not dead? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she were afraid the answer would change everything she thought she knew about him. Daniel sighed heavily, leaning back in the chair, looking worn out as if he'd been carrying this secret for years. I didn't want to tell you this way, but Clara's alive, Rebecca. She faked her death. She's been hiding all this time. Rebecca stared at him, disbelief creeping over her features. What? Why would she do that? And why wouldn't you tell me? I didn't know how. When I found out, it was already too late. She had disappeared from my life, and I thought she was gone for good. Daniel muttered, his voice tinged with regret. But she's back. And I don't know what to do. Rebecca took a step back, trying to wrap her head around the revelation. So all this time, you've been carrying around her ring like, what? A reminder of a dead woman who isn't actually dead? Who had somehow remained a ghost in their relationship, began to swirl in her mind. A woman who wasn't dead, a woman who had faked her death for reasons unknown. Where is she now? Rebecca asked, her voice shaking with both curiosity and apprehension. Daniel hesitated before responding. I don't know. She contacted me a few weeks ago. That's when I found out she was still alive, and she asked for my help. Rebecca's stomach twisted, a mix of emotions, betrayal, fear, and maybe even a little jealousy. What kind of help? She wants me to help her disappear again. For good this time, Daniel said, his eyes darkening as he spoke. But I'm not sure what I'm walking into, and that's why I didn't tell you before. I was protecting you. Rebecca took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She was in uncharted territory now, and she could feel the ground beneath her feet shifting. You're going to help her? I don't know. I don't think I should, but she's asking for my help, Daniel said, frustration creeping into his voice. I can't just walk away. Not without knowing the truth about everything. Rebecca's gaze narrowed. And you don't think that asking for help is a little suspicious? After all this time, she just shows up and wants you to help her disappear again? Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with a mixture of guilt and frustration. I didn't want to believe it at first. But the more I've thought about it, the more I realize. I don't know who Clara really is anymore. I never knew everything about her. She wasn't just my girlfriend, she was someone else entirely. And that's what scares me. Rebecca's voice softened, a tinge of sympathy creeping into her tone. So what now? Daniel stood up, his hands gripping the edge of the table. I don't know. But I need you to understand, Rebecca. This is bigger than anything I've ever dealt with. And I need to figure out what's really going on before I make any decisions. Rebecca nodded slowly, though a part of her still felt like she was standing on the edge of something dangerous, unsure whether to jump or turn away. Gaze hardening. So you've been keeping a dead woman's ring, hoping one day you'd get closure? Daniel's silence said everything. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat as the weight of the situation settled in. And now what? You think we just pick up where you left off with her? You think you can walk into her life after all this time? Daniel shook his head. I don't know what I think. I just know I have to find her. I need to know why she left. Why she faked it. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Then why did you keep the ring, Daniel? If you didn't have feelings for her. Because I was trying to move on. But I couldn't just erase her memory, Rebecca. It wasn't like that. The silence stretched between them. Before Rebecca could respond, the front door creaked open. Sylvia stepped inside, looking like she just stepped out of a mystery novel, holding a latte in one hand. Sorry to interrupt your emotional meltdown, but I found Clara. Both Rebecca and Daniel froze. What? Daniel whispered, the blood draining from his face. Sylvia shrugged. She's living in a lighthouse. In Maine. How do you know this? Rebecca asked, crossing her arms. Well, I'm a psychic, Sylvia said, her lips curling into a mischievous smile. Also, I googled it. Rebecca looked at Daniel, raising an eyebrow. Well? What are we waiting for? Daniel swallowed, rubbing his temples. You want me to drive to Maine to find Clara? Yeah, Rebecca said, her voice unyielding. You've been carrying this weight around for months, and now you have a chance to fix it. We have a chance. I'm not sure I'm ready for this, Daniel admitted, his tone quiet. What if I show up and she doesn't want me there? What if I make things worse? Rebecca placed a hand on his arm. You won't know unless you go. And you don't have to do it alone. Daniel looked at her, torn between uncertainty and relief. You're coming with me? Of course. You think I'm going to let you drive halfway across the country without me? She said, trying to lighten the mood. Besides, this is an adventure. You know you can't keep secrets from me forever. Great. Sylvia chimed in from the corner, where she'd been pretending to not listen. This is officially a road trip now. I'll get the snacks. Wait, no. Daniel began, his voice exasperated. We're not bringing you. Too late, Sylvia said, already grabbing a large bag of chips and a stack of napkins from the kitchen counter. You need me. And trust me, I'm the best company when it comes to long drives. I bring the snacks, the sass, and the emergency pepper spray. What more could you need? Rebecca shot Daniel a look, and he sighed. Fine. But if you start pulling out tarot cards in the back seat, I'm kicking you out. Sylvia grinned and shook her head. Don't worry. I'll save those for the real drama. The drive was an odd mix of chaotic energy and awkward silence. Daniel drove, occasionally glancing at Rebecca in the passenger seat, who was lost in thought. Sylvia, sitting in the back, had a whole arsenal of snacks laid out in front of her, munching away like it was a movie marathon. Do you think she'll be happy to see me? Daniel asked quietly after several hours of highway stretching ahead. Rebecca didn't look at him but answered with certainty. I think Clara will be glad you finally showed up. And if she's not? Well, we'll deal with that too. Sylvia turned her head from the back seat, tapping a chip bag against her knee. Look at you two, all supportive and mature and grown up. This is cute. If I didn't know better, I'd say you guys were in a Hallmark movie. Daniel rolled his eyes. Can we focus on the fact that we're driving to Maine to confront a ghost? Because that feels like it should be a bigger deal than it is. We'll get there, Rebecca said, smiling. And when we do, we'll deal with it. Together. Hours passed, and the landscape slowly shifted. They left the highways behind, driving toward rocky cliffs and jagged shorelines. The lighthouse finally loomed ahead, a towering figure in the mist, its rotating beam cutting through the heavy air. We're here, Daniel murmured as he slowed the car to a stop at the edge of the cliff. Sylvia grabbed her bag and opened the door. And now the real fun begins. Daniel stared out at the lighthouse. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. Rebecca squeezed his hand. But you're doing it anyway. And with that, they all stepped out into the cold wind, ready to face whatever came next. The lighthouse was colder than expected, its beams cutting through the fog like an eerie sentinel. Clara opened the door, her face a mix of surprise and confusion. Daniel? She whispered, almost as if she couldn't believe it. Clara, Daniel breathed, his voice thick with emotion. Rebecca, standing a bit behind, cleared her throat. Hi, I'm the wife. Clara blinked, clearly thrown. She quickly stepped aside, ushering them in. Sylvia looked at her straight in the eyes and said loudly, Married men should be of limits, don't you think so, sister? And saying that, she placed all the trash from the snacks that she ate on her way to Maine in Clara's hand. Clara, looking at her in confusion, said, Daniel loves me, he always has, and always will. Rebecca turned around and added to Clara's speech, Yes. Nothing better than making the one who loves us suffer, pretending to be dead for so many years, and now pulling the love card to mess with his head. Daniel turned around and held Rebecca's hand, saying, Don't worry, sweetheart, thanks for coming with me and helping me put this episode behind me. And saying that, he placed the box with the ring and the letter on the table. Turning to Clara, he looked at her and said, I have mourned you all these years, you were always a ghost in my marriage, but no more. And for a couple of minutes they were all silent except Sylvia, who was mumbling something to herself. After the awkwardness of settling in, Clara offered them tea and cookies that tasted like cardboard. As they sipped, Clara explained to Daniel, I was a shady producer. I had mountains of debt. I faked my death to escape it all. And when I finally wrote you that letter, I didn't expect you to still care. I just wanted to see you again. I love you, Daniel. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. So you've been alive all this whole time? Clara nodded sheepishly. Yes. I never thought it'd get this complicated. Rebecca turned to Daniel. She said she loves you, he replied. I don't care, I love my wife. There is no us, and do I care for you? Yes, I care for you, but not at the risk of losing my wife. Daniel paused, his throat tight. We should go, honey, he said, holding Rebecca's hand. Sylvia snapped a picture with her phone. Cool. Now I can update your Wikipedia page. Clara blinked, completely lost. My what? Please don't do that. Hours later, they were back in the city, the tension from the lighthouse still lingering in the air. Rebecca poured coffee into Daniel's mug, her movements slow, deliberate. Daniel was lost in thought, staring out the window. He hadn't expected this, Clara showing up, alive and well, after all these years. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad movie. Rebecca slid into the chair opposite him, setting a fresh mug of coffee in front of him. You okay? Daniel blinked, looking up at her. I don't know. I thought I had closure when I thought she was gone. But now... I get it, Rebecca said, her voice soft. It's a lot to process. Daniel exhaled slowly. Yeah. The doorbell rang, breaking the quiet moment. Rebecca shot Daniel a look. I swear, if it's another psychic coming to tell us our future. Sylvia walked in, grinning ear to ear. Guess who brought tarot cards? She flopped down onto the couch with a flourish, pulling out a fresh deck. You two need some clarity. I'm here for you. Rebecca groaned. Not the tower again. I shuffled, I swear, Sylvia said, her face lighting up with mischief. Besides, it's probably the sun card this time. You two seem to be on the up and up. Rebecca raised an eyebrow but couldn't help but smile. Well, as long as it's not disaster. Sylvia grinned and flipped the first card. The sun stared up at them, its bright rays illuminating the room in an almost surreal way. Rebecca met Daniel's eyes. Well, that's a good sign, I guess. Daniel chuckled, looking at the card. Maybe things will finally be okay. Sylvia tapped the table with her fingers. You two are such a boring love story, I swear. Rebecca laughed, a full, genuine laugh. And in that moment, despite everything that had happened, they all felt something shift, like they were finding their way back to something simple and good. For the first time in a long while, they all smiled.